I had been looking forward to this night for weeks, my 32nd birthday. It wasn't a milestone I usually celebrated with much fanfare, but this year felt different. I wanted something simple, just a quiet dinner at my favorite little bistro downtown, the one with exposed brick walls, warm amber lighting, and the soft hum of jazz playing in the background. I arrived early, taking a deep breath as I stepped through the doors. The smell of roasted garlic, sizzling meats, and freshly baked bread wrapped around me like a familiar hug. My mind was buzzing with thoughts of the past year, the hard lessons, the heartbreaks, the moments I'd wished I could forget, and the small victories that no one else seemed to notice. Tonight, I promised myself, I would just enjoy the evening. A waitress approached, tall and wiry, with a kind but cautious smile. "Good evening. Table for one?" she asked. "Yes, please," I replied, trying to sound casual though my heart was already racing. I could feel the weight of my own thoughts pressing down like a storm on the horizon. She led me to a small table by the window. The city lights outside flickered like tiny stars, and for a moment, I allowed myself to imagine this night as peaceful, untouched by anything chaotic. After I settled in, she returned with the menu and a glass of sparkling water. "Would you like a drink?" she asked, setting the menu down gently. "I'll have a cocktail." "Something light, refreshing," I said, trying to shake the feeling of unease that had started to creep in. She paused, her eyes flicking to mine with an intensity one couldn't place. "Be careful with that," she said softly. I frowned, half laughing. "Careful with what?" "That drink," she said again, more firmly this time. "Don't drink that. 5 minutes. Trust me." Her words hit me like a jolt of electricity. I laughed nervously, trying to mask the creeping panic. "You're joking, right?" She shook her head. "I'm serious. Just wait." I waved her off. Maybe it was the nerves, maybe the slight pressure I felt to ignore strangers, but I convinced myself it was some quirky superstition, a little theater to make the evening feel special. I watched her walk away, disappearing into the warm glow of the dining room, leaving me alone with my thoughts and a strange knot of anxiety in my stomach. The waiter came to take my order, and I glanced down at the menu, trying to distract myself. My fingers traced the edge of the glass as I considered her warning. "Don't drink that. 5 minutes." The words repeated in my mind like a mantra, each repetition heavier than the last. I ordered a light gin and tonic, something I'd had 100 times before, and tried to settle in, telling myself it was fine. Nothing would happen. As I sipped water instead of the drink, I glanced around the restaurant. The soft murmur of conversations, the clinking of cutlery, the occasional burst of laughter, all of it felt normal. But beneath it, a tension simmered, a pulse of unease that refused to let me ignore the waitress's warning. 5 minutes passed slowly, agonizingly. I checked my watch. 4:55, 4:56. The world seemed to hold its breath with me, and then the first sound broke the silence, a crash from the kitchen. Plates shattering. A loud thump, a shout. My stomach dropped. My hands tightened around the menu as I froze in place. The waitress appeared again, rushing past tables, her face pale, her eyes darting around. She stopped at my table and leaned in, whispering, "It's here. You have to move." "What? Move where?" I asked, panic rising, heart hammering against my chest. "There's no time to explain. Just get up. Now." I stood, unsteady, adrenaline surging. Behind her, a shadowy figure emerged from the kitchen, a man in a dark hoodie, moving quickly, unseen by most patrons. Something was off, an instinct screamed at me that this wasn't a simple accident. The waitress grabbed my arm, pulling me toward the back exit. "Go, don't look back." Confusion and fear collided. I felt the world tilt as we rushed through narrow hallways, the muffled sounds of the restaurant fading behind us. Patrons shouted, but I barely registered it. The knot in my chest tightened until it felt like it would choke me. We reached the alley behind the bistro. The cool night air hit my face, grounding me in reality. I stopped, gasping for breath, trying to process what had just happened. "Why? What's going on?" I demanded, turning to the waitress. She held up her hands, signaling me to stay calm. "Someone tampered with your drink. Poison, I think." I saw the guy slip something into it while you weren't looking. You were lucky I noticed in time. I felt my knees weaken, collapsing onto the damp pavement. My hands shook uncontrollably. Lucky. I could've, you would've if I hadn't warned you, she interrupted, her voice steady but soft. That's why I told you not to drink it. Tears stung my eyes. Relief, fear, anger all tangled together. I wanted to scream, to cry, to shake every nerve loose from the tension that had gripped me for those terrifying minutes. The waitress handed me her phone. I called the police. They're on their way. I stared at her, gratitude and shock colliding. How did you know? How did you even notice? She shrugged, though her eyes were sharp. I've worked here long enough to notice when something's wrong. And you had a vibe tonight. Something wasn't right. I trust my instincts. I sat in the alley, drenched in the night air, shaking. Every birthday wish, every hope for a calm, happy evening, felt like a memory from another life. I realized then how fragile life was, how quickly normalcy could slip away. The sound of sirens in the distance began to grow. Relief surged through me, but so did a strange emptiness. The world could be kind, yes, but it could also be cruel. One wrong sip, one unnoticed detail, and it could have ended differently. Thank you, I whispered, my voice breaking. I don't even know how to, she smiled faintly. Just be careful next time. Life has a way of testing us when we least expect it. I nodded, still shivering. As the police arrived, securing the area and questioning the staff, I realized that birthdays were no longer about cake or candles. Sometimes, they were about survival. About noticing the quiet warnings that could save you from disaster. And as I walked home later that night, the adrenaline finally wearing off, I made a silent promise to myself. Never ignore instincts. Never take life for granted. And never, ever assume that safety is guaranteed, even in familiar places. The next day, I woke to a quiet that felt almost unreal. My apartment was still, the city noises muted by my exhaustion and lingering fear. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the shadowy figure at the bistro, the slick motion of a hand near my drink, the tension in the waitress's voice as she pulled me from danger. I couldn't shake the feeling that it was more than luck, that something had been guiding me, keeping me alive. I knew I had to understand what had almost happened. I called the bistro first, wanting to speak with the manager. Hello, this is Jenna, manager at Le Petit Bistro, a polite voice answered. How can I help you? I was there last night. My drink, someone tried to poison it, I said, voice tight. I need to know what your staff saw. There was a long pause. Oh my. I heard about that. You were very lucky. One of our waitresses noticed something strange just as she was about to serve it. I'll review security footage and see what we can find. I felt my chest tighten. Thank you. Please. I need to know who it was and why. The manager promised to call back. I hung up, hands trembling, and poured a second cup of coffee, careful to inspect it before sipping. I stared out the window, replaying the scene over and over. The adrenaline had faded, replaced by a gnawing, persistent fear. Later, I decided to return to the bistro in person. Maybe seeing it all again would help me make sense of the chaos. The waitress, whose name I now knew was Sarah, met me in the alley behind the restaurant. You came back, she said, eyebrows raised. I need answers, I replied. Who could have done this? Why? Sarah shook her head. I don't know. But I have an idea. We've had problems before, weird people hanging around, some patrons asking odd questions about other guests. Nothing like this, though. Her words didn't calm me, they sharpened the fear. Someone had planned this. Someone had targeted me specifically. We entered the bistro. The manager greeted us nervously. We've reviewed the security footage, he said. There's someone who slipped into the kitchen briefly, and yes, they tampered with your drink. We don't know who exactly, but we're contacting the authorities. The weight of it hit me. This wasn't random. It wasn't chance. Someone had wanted to harm me, and that someone was clever, patient, and bold. As Sarah led me to the footage room, I couldn't help noticing the patrons around us, oblivious to the near tragedy. Life continued for them, ordinary and safe. And for me, life had changed forever in a matter of 5 minutes. We watched the footage together. The figure in the hoodie approached my table, looking over their shoulder, then quickly bent toward the drink as if it were an innocent routine task. The movement was precise, practiced. My stomach churned. "Do you recognize them?" I asked, voice trembling. Sarah shook her head. "No. It's someone new. Someone careful." I ran my hands through my hair, feeling anger mix with fear. How could someone even think this is okay? Who does this to another human being? She didn't answer. She just rested a hand on my shoulder, grounding me. "You're alive. That's what matters. Everything else can be handled." For the rest of the day, I couldn't stop thinking. I called my parents, tried to tell them what happened, but they didn't grasp the severity. "It's just a scary story, honey," my dad said casually. "Don't let it get to you." But I knew it wasn't a story. It was real. And it could have ended me. That evening, I met Sarah again. She seemed more anxious than before. "I think they're still here," she whispered. "They've been asking questions. About tables, reservations, your habits." I felt my blood run cold. "Still here? You mean, stalking me?" "I don't know yet. But you need to be careful. Don't go out alone. Don't drink anything you haven't poured yourself." I nodded, realizing how vulnerable I had been. My own routine, a birthday dinner meant to celebrate life, had nearly cost me everything. The following days were a blur of paranoia. Every knock at the door, every stranger in the street, every unattended drink at work made my chest tighten. The police were investigating, but I could see the limitations of their efforts. I needed to be vigilant. Then came the call from the manager. "We found something else," he said, voice tense. "The person left a note in the kitchen. It's addressed to you." My hands shook as I read it. "Next time, there won't be a warning." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. Someone had targeted me, deliberately, with malice in their heart. The waitress's intuition had saved me, but it hadn't stopped the threat. I stared at the note, gripping it tightly, thinking of my birthday just a few nights ago, how quickly joy can turn to terror. I realized that survival wasn't just about luck, it was about paying attention, trusting instincts, and acting decisively when danger appears. That night, I sat alone in my apartment, Sarah's words echoing in my mind, "Don't go out alone. Don't drink anything you haven't poured yourself." I made a silent vow to myself. I would not let fear dictate my life, but I would be smarter, stronger, and more alert than ever before. And deep down, I knew this wasn't over. The person who had tried to harm me was still out there. They had plans. And I would be ready. The days after that terrifying night were some of the longest I've ever lived. Every sound, every shadow felt magnified. I barely slept. Every time I poured a drink, I examined it, my hands shaking. Every time I left my apartment, I scanned the streets for someone lurking, someone who might be following me. I realized, painfully, that life could change in an instant, and I had been living under a false sense of safety for far too long. Sarah, the waitress, became my unexpected anchor. She checked in on me, sometimes sitting quietly while I recounted every detail of the night. Her calm presence grounded me, and I began to understand something crucial. Instincts aren't paranoia, they're survival. One evening, the police called. "We think we have a lead," the detective said, voice low. "Security footage from a nearby cafe caught someone matching the description of your attacker, circling the bistro before your birthday dinner. We're moving carefully to identify them." My heart raced. "Do you have a name?" "Not yet," he said. "But we'll keep you updated. In the meantime, stay vigilant." I hung up, stomach churning. The idea that the person was still nearby, possibly watching, waiting for another opportunity, made my skin crawl. I couldn't relax. I couldn't pretend life was normal. A week later, I received another call, this time from Sarah. "You need to see this," she said, her voice urgent. I met her at the bistro. The manager ushered me into the back office, and there, on a small desk, lay a photograph. It was of my attacker, the same figure from the footage, clearly taken from outside the bistro. But what struck me most was the face. I recognized it immediately. It was someone I knew. Shock, disbelief, and anger collided inside me. My mind raced through every memory, every interaction, every polite smile that had seemed harmless. How could someone I trusted, someone I saw regularly, do something like this? Sarah noticed my expression. "Do you know them?" I nodded slowly, my hands trembling. "Yes. It's Mark. He used to work with me years ago. We had a falling out, but I never imagined he'd do this." The realization hit like a tidal wave. Betrayal didn't even begin to cover it. Someone I had considered a colleague, someone I had laughed with, shared ideas with, trusted, had planned to endanger my life. The police acted quickly. They traced Mark's movements and discovered that he had been following me for weeks, studying my routines, waiting for the perfect opportunity. The thought made my stomach turn. How close had I come? How many times had I unknowingly stepped into danger? A few days later, the police arrested him. During questioning, it became clear that his motives were fueled by jealousy and resentment, a toxic mix of envy over my career success and personal grudges that had festered for years. I watched from a distance as he was taken away, cuffs clinking, a mask of rage on his face. Relief washed over me, but it was complicated by lingering fear and disbelief. How could someone plan something so meticulously, so maliciously, and for so long? In the weeks that followed, life slowly returned to a semblance of normalcy, though I remained cautious. I strengthened my routines, double-checked every drink, and stayed aware of my surroundings. But I also learned a profound lesson: vigilance and instincts are powerful tools. When a warning appears, even from a stranger, it's worth heeding. I stayed in touch with Sarah, thanking her countless times. "You saved my life," I told her one evening, voice thick with emotion. She smiled faintly. "I just did what anyone would do if they noticed something wrong. You listened. That's what made the difference." Her words resonated. It wasn't luck that saved me entirely, it was awareness, action, and the courage to trust someone else's warning. That birthday, meant to celebrate my life, had nearly ended it. But it also taught me something invaluable. Life is fragile, trust must be earned, and instincts are worth listening to, sometimes more than anything else. I began to document everything in a journal, both as therapy and as a warning to myself. Every detail, every feeling, every small decision that saved me was there. I realized that survival is not just about escaping danger, it's about understanding it, respecting it, and learning from it. Months later, I returned to the bistro, this time with gratitude and calm. The place felt different, familiar yet transformed. It was a reminder of what had happened, yes, but also of the life I still had. Sarah served me coffee with a small, knowing smile. "Happy belated birthday," she said softly. I smiled, holding the cup carefully in my hands. "Thank you, for everything." And as I sipped the coffee, safe and alive, I understood the truth I had learned the hard way. Sometimes, life's most profound lessons come wrapped in fear, chaos, and unexpected warnings. It's up to us to listen, to act, and to survive.